Boy, just an extra voice of thank you for those who gathered here yesterday for the Bereaved Mothers event, and those who gathered at camp. Thank you. I heard from others. Actually, I ended up leaving early, but heard from others that all the projects that they had planned for the day got knocked out at camp. So that was awesome in preparation for the thousands of young men and women that are coming soon. So thank you for your participation in the ministry that we do for the sake of Christ. Well, here we are in Matthew chapter 10, and we're gonna actually finish today and then take a little pause for Mother's Day, and then get back at it after just a few moments of celebration. The school year's kind of coming to an end, and we want to reflect a little bit and give thanks that way as well. And we've got a picnic coming up, which is to celebrate our 20-year anniversary. We opened this campus on June 1st. I can prove it. I have the shovel in my office. I do. I'll bring it. No, I won't bring it next time. So, in 20 years, God has used us and blessed us in such tremendous ways, and it's to celebrate on that Sunday, which is going to be June 4th. Actually, we'll have a massive church-wide picnic and lots of fun stuff to do for the kids and food and all kinds of fun things, and you'll hear more about that. So, and then we'll get right back at Matthew. Well, here we are in Matthew chapter 10, and I told you the last couple times, this is an interesting turning point in Matthew. It ought to be an interesting turning point in your mind as we listen to his presentation of Jesus the Christ, the King, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham. Remember his genealogy. This is the Son of God. This is the Son of Man. And so he came through Mary. This is the Son of God who would be the king not just of the Jews but of the Gentiles too. So Matthew shows you as no other the Gentile kingly figures, the Magi, worshiping him. Matthew shows you that. And so his presentation of the king is unfolding with the proofs that we have that he's given to us in chapters 8 and 9. You ought to be able to come to the conclusion in your mind that this is him. He came with proof, verifying who he is, the message that he brought. And Matthew's showing this to you. And as 9 kind of wraps up its thought, because you'll need it for today. Today's one of the heaviest texts you can grab out of Matthew as a standalone text. It's heavy today. But as the proof wraps up and Jesus is presented with that there's no rational mind that would look at him and say otherwise, you have these two haunting thoughts, if you will. 9:33, never was anything seen like this in all of Israel. That's true. And therefore everyone came to faith. No, that's not true. Because the very next verse is the tension we enter into in today's text. And the Pharisees said what? He does these things by the devil. The prince of demons. We're going to see his name today. Which was, in essence, the right arm of Satan himself. So you enter into the context of Jesus as we do today, where there's always tension around his name. There are always some who are going to look at him and say, my Lord and my God. And you worship him like no other. And you love him in comparison to no other. And there's others who are going to look at him and say, he's nothing. Or maybe even evil. And so that's the fabric that the gospel moves out in chapter 10, when God sends his called ones, the apostles, the sent ones. And he encourages them and he warns them, as I would do for you today, and God consistently does in his word. That you're going to go out into that kind of environment, into that kind of fabric, and you're going to do what? Seek the lost, the shepherdless sheep. because they're heading in their own direction, like you were at one point. If you've put your faith in him, like maybe you still are, and you're looking. Listen to Solomon. There is a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof leads to death. There is a way that you're going to head in your life, and the end of that path is death. And I'm not talking physical death. I'm talking spiritual death, which we'll reference today. Hell. So you go and you reach and you love and you move to what? To reach the shepherdless sheep. Using what? Compassion. That's what he modeled. And so the 12 are sent out to Israel first. And so this passage today, when we launch out, it will feel heavy. Israel will feel thick. You need to watch this, and you'll sense it. And he sends them out 2 by 2, if you will, not alone, and tells them, some will accept you, stay at their house, and let them support you, let them help you, let your peace come upon them, and others will reject you. And then he says, shake the dust off your feet and move to the next. So you have this fabric of both acceptance and rejection, so as to suggest that you ought to be very aware of the expectation of what happens when you bring the good news of the kingdom of God into the darkness. Sometimes beautiful things happen. I hope you're one of them. I am. And sometimes not so beautiful. What do you expect? You want the hanging umbrella over today's text. What are your expectations of what God has asked you to do with His message? What do you expect as you now are a light in the darkness? You are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. What do you expect? I mean, what do you expect when you acknowledge Him in your life and with your life? And I'm not talking about in here. In here's a piece of cake. This is easy. I don't see anybody going up and down the aisle swatting you on the hand saying, I mean, when you acknowledge Him in your life and with your life at school, in your community, with your neighbors, in the workplace, when you just live your life in such a way that He's present with you. There's an identification, there's an alliance and an allegiance, there's an alignment with Him. Acknowledge. What is it that you expect? What happens when you acknowledge Him in your home? Does that always work out peachy? So the text moves today with the realization of asking you and me, what is it that you expect? Because He instructs them in the midst of the way they go on their expectations. And of the things that will happen, beautiful things, now and in the life to come, and the bad things that could happen here, now and potentially in the life to come. So here we are, Matthew chapter 10, and He's just told them, go to these villages and towns in Israel. So the next word out of His mouth. This is, if you would, I don't know if this is one consistent monologue as it's presented here, if He said all this in one setting or not. Or Matthew compiles sometimes, that's a possibility, so that he has a presentation before you of who this one is. But then out of his mouth, he comments what's next. Behold, chapter 10 and verse 16. I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Well, there's an encouraging word. You know, it doesn't usually end well for the sheep when they're in the midst of wolves. The idea is that there's a vulnerability there. a real vulnerability, a real danger. It's real. When the sheep are in the midst of wolves, someone liable to lose a lamb chop. It might not end well for a sheep. So he doesn't say it's all going to be, wonderful and singing. There's going to be some challenges here. I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be wise as serpents, innocent as doves. Hang on to that. Wise as serpents, the serpent, the snake. You're not often compared to a serpent in Scripture, especially when there's spiritual implications. But here, think of the physical animal. The serpent was known as a wise, crafty, intelligent animal. Reptile, we would call it. One that moves wisely, quietly most of the times, with wisdom. And the serpent knows how to protect its head, actually, which is an interesting comment about a serpent. Be wise like a serpent. Be innocent like a dove. Doves are not known for their intelligence, just the opposite. Doves are known for their gentleness. Doves are known to be bringers and proclaimers and the telltale sign of peace. A dove. Be intelligent, be thinking, be wise, be innocent. How different from a wolf that is. Be wise as serpents, be innocent as doves, beware of men. For they will deliver you over to courts. That's the word Sanhedrin in the Greek. Councils, if you will. This text has a very Jewish feel to it. You'll see it immediately, the front end of this text. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts and flog you in their synagogues. See the Jewish feel here. And you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. Now he told them, go to Israel. Now listen, you can feel immediately if you're paying attention that this text has very little to do with their current outing. Their current outing was almost without event in the context of this kind of stuff. This text has much more to do. He's writing not just to them in this moment, he's writing to them in the future. And you need to be able to kind of piece that together. They weren't captured, they weren't flogged, they weren't dragged before governors and kings. Not yet. They would be. This would be coming. You know, when you read the Bible, sometimes the texts are complicated because you're looking at one piece of the puzzle. I liken it to, I actually looked online. I typed in, you can Google everything. I love and hate Google, right? World's hardest puzzles. This one came up. Amongst some others, there were even worse nightmares, if you can imagine. That's a 1,000-piece puzzle. Shoot me. You got to be kidding me. If you don't have a feel of the big picture, you're not going to know where this piece fits. In order to work a puzzle like this, you got to study the piece. And a good puzzle crafter, maker, putter together has a good picture of the whole so that you know where it fits. This text is like that. It's not for their immediate consumption. It's not for their immediate warning, but it would be. In fact, the Scripture is written to the immediate hearers. It's written to the ones that would hear after them, like us. And Scripture is written also for those who have yet to hear, those who will come after us. This text pushes all the way to that realm. All three of those realms. He'll indicate so by the way he drags in verse 23, and he talks about the return of the Son of Man. I think the right way to piece this in the puzzle is he's talking about the end times here and the witness of Israel in the end to Israel, the witness of Jews to the towns of Israel. And you'll see it in the Revelation. They will drag you before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. That would happen to them. And when they deliver you over, do not be anxious about how you are to speak or what you are to say. For what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it's not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child. And children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. While they persecute you when they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. You see, this is written for those who are beyond these 12. Oh, these 12, they would give their lives indeed. But there's more going on here, as if Jesus' words move from their ministry in Israel to the end-time ministry that will go on in Israel. A careful read of Revelation chapter 7 and chapter 14, you will find 144,000 men of Judaism, Jews, who are set apart. The tribes are listed. Don't pay any attention what these odd cults do with that 144,000. Good grief. Read the text. These are men of Israel that Jesus sets aside, seals them for protection, and gives them a message in the end. And they will take it to Israel in the end. This is as if he alludes to this in the context of this big picture. And we'll hear more about this in Matthew chapter 24 and 25, the end. But here, even a warning for those who would read it, that this is how it's going to, you're not going to go through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. That's the end. I think that's the right way to interpret this text. In other words, you're going to have trouble. This is going to be a bumpy ride along the way. Jesus prays to his Father, John 17, the great high priestly prayer, and Jesus is speaking to his Father in heaven just before the crucifixion. I have given them your word, he says, them, the apostles, his disciples. And the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. Protect them until their task is done, and then their task will be done. What are your expectations? What were their expectations in the context of Israel and what they would do? And now I think he broadens the text, so listen carefully. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. I love this text. It ought to weigh heavy on you. He's getting at expectations. What is his expectation of you? What is your expectation of him? What is his expectation of you? You follow him. That's what a disciple does. And be careful, because our culture is funny with this. We love to claim we follow Jesus, but we're nothing like Jesus. To follow was not an apprentice with a master, was to be like the master. It was to do as the master did. It was to emulate the master. It was to be like him with your life. You cannot follow someone who's holy and not be holy. God says, be holy because I'm holy. You cannot follow someone who is the light and not be the light. That's just lip service. So he says, listen, a disciple's not above his master, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his master. There's this idea that, is it enough to be like him? Or not enough? Jesus, that was good for you, but I want my own way here. I mean, we're all singing that same song with Frank Sinatra, right? I did it my way. That's the sheep that are wandering. They're going their own path. I did it my way with my life. I did it my way with my resources, with my talents, my way. I did it my way with my body. Whose body do you think it is? It's mine. I did it my way. Your way isn't enough. It's enough for a disciple to be like his master. Or it isn't. And that's an important call. We're supposed to be singing, I did it his way. There's a new song. We've been so sucked into the American culture that we've turned individualism into an idol. I want to be so different. I want to be so unique. I want to be such an influencer. I do want to be different from the world. I want to be like him. And so his warning here, listen, if you're like him, you're going to have some challenges. Right, listen, if it's enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master, and if they've called the master of the house Beelzebul, the devil himself, if you will, that was a Philistine god, the Lord of the Flies or Lord of Dung. And the Jews came to associate Beelzebul, Beelzebub, as the right hand of Satan himself. If Jesus says, if they called me Satan, that's what they just did. He does this by the power of the devil. And what are they going to call you? And if all they have is good stuff to say about you, are you like me? Boy, what a great warning. This passage is haunting, I think, to me anyways. Woe to you when all people speak well of you. Like, who doesn't want to be spoke well of? For so their fathers did to the false prophets. I mean, if everybody's singing your praises, if the world is singing your praises, if your lifestyle, your life choices, your life in and of itself, when it's lived in and for Jesus, isn't offensive to anybody, I'm guessing you're not doing it right. It's just a guess. But I got good company. Woe to you when everyone says, that's what the false prophets did to the rulers of the earth. Tell me what you want to hear. I want to hear this. That's what I'm going to say. There, now are we on good terms? I love you. We're on good terms. Boy, what a troublemaker to catch our hearts, and be careful with this. Because if you live your life the way Christ would have you live your life, chances are there's a warning's going to happen. If you hold to the things that he expects you to hold to, then trouble's probably going to come. It did for them, and in our culture that won't be any different. So, therefore, verse 26, right? Don't be afraid. So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will be not revealed, or hidden that will not be known. And what I tell you in the dark, say in the light. And what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. In other words, don't be afraid. Speak. Speak. Because fear, if you let it manifest, will drive you into silence. Man, do I have an amen to that one? You keep that to yourself. Okay, but I'm not supposed to. Don't be afraid of them. Speak up. What I whispered to you, proclaim in public, if you will, on the housetops. Again, and do not fear those who can kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Right? In other words, he raises the notch all the way to the end of this life. But what if I speak? What if I live this way? What if I say these things? What if I just do this? And it costs me my life. I mean, we don't really have that fear in this country, not really. But all around the world that happens. He says, don't be afraid. I would confess to you, and I don't know, probably few in this room couldn't say, and there were moments when I wish I would have spoken up, and I didn't. For fear, I guess. Fear or not wanting to be that guy. You know, that woman. Oh, yeah. Don't be afraid, he says. Fear will be tied very closely to the level of the maturity of your faith. Why are you so afraid, you of little faith? I mean, even if they can kill the body, do not fear those who can kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Ooh, now he steps it up. I mean, what can they do to you in the end? I'll tell you who you should fear. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. See, he raises it up to the point and says, listen, if you're going to tremble and you're going to be afraid, let me tell you who to tremble before. Tremble before him who has authority not over this physical life, but the next life. Heaven and hell. I mean, every time I see the word hell, I perk up a little bit in my Bible. I don't know about you. I'll tell you who you should fear. He's pointing to himself. Now, I get that. Death in this case is a terrible thing. But the damage that evil can bring to you in this life, today and tomorrow and this week, the damage that this broken, sinful, fallen world can bring to you is small in comparison to the damage associated with eternity. Eternal life, eternal death. So Jesus says, listen, if you're going to be afraid, I'll tell you who to be afraid of. I'll tell you what to fear. Don't be afraid. Peter uses the same mindset when he's writing a verse we probably all know, but think this through. 1 Peter 3:13, you'll hear the common phrase. Now, who's there to harm you if you're zealous for what's good? Just do what's good. Be right. But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled. In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy. He's different. He's other. Always being prepared to make a defense, to give an answer. It's a courtroom term. When you're questioned, it's not an aggressive term. It's a term that you offer up when someone sees you suffering. Always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. Wise as serpents, innocent as doves. Wise as serpents, innocent as doves. I think we're exercising the wisdom, but we've lost the innocence. Be like a dove, gentle. Gentleness and respect. Respond with hope, not fear, because someone's watching. Someone's always watching. Your Father is always watching. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs on your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore. You are of more value than many sparrows. You should always remember in this, God has you. Your Father has you. He does not say that you will not fall. What he says is, I know it and I see it and you are valuable. Trust him. Don't be afraid. I know that's hard. I'm not saying these texts are easy. 2 sparrows for a penny. I mean, sparrows were cheap even among birds. What's your cheapest bird? I'll take 2 of them. But you're not a cheap bird to God. You were costly and valuable to God. Great value. Don't be afraid. That's his point here. Nothing evil is going to touch you this week that he's not aware of and hasn't given approval to. Otherwise, it would not touch you. Don't be afraid. Love this passage, Psalm 116. I quoted it this week at a funeral. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. O Lord, I am your servant. I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. You have loosed me from my bonds. You have loosed my bonds. Don't be afraid. I mean, that's the point here, right? Nothing's going to come upon you that doesn't have his approval. We're all going to die. That's true, physical death. I mean, I'm not taking this thing with me. Are you? I want a new one. I'm upgrading. Even if the Lord himself comes and calls us all home, you ain't taking this thing with you. The one you're going to need there is very different. Don't be afraid. That's his point to these men who are going out. Don't be afraid. It's a sign of mature faith. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. See what he's doing? He's trying to get you to think forward. The word acknowledge means to align with, to be in allegiance with. Whoever acknowledges me in this life before men, I'm going to look at my Father and say, I acknowledge her. I acknowledge him. What are his expectations of you? What are your expectations of him? This is mine. You say of him here, I am with him. And he says of you there to his Father, he is with me. What are your expectations? And he who says, I'm not with him, he is not mine. He says to his Father, and he's not with me. She's not mine. And don't think this is a one-time mess up. Otherwise, Peter would be in hell. Right? I mean, be careful with this. I love Paul's passage here, 2 Timothy. He writes to Timothy, 2 Timothy 2. Here's a trustworthy saying. If we died with him, we will live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. That was Peter, because he was lying. I don't know him. I don't know him. I don't know him. Thankfully, he was lying. That's called faithlessness. And why does Jesus say, he's mine? Because he can't deny himself. If you're in Christ, he is yours and you are his. He would have to deny himself to deny you. This is pointing to those who say, I am not with him. And he affirms that saying, he's not with me. What are your expectations of him? What are his of you? Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Ugh. When I broke this text up originally, that text fell on Mother's Day next week. I decided not to do it. I decided I'll deal with it today. You know, we sing it wrong at Christmas. I know we have good intentions. Peace on earth, goodwill to men. And Jesus never said, I'm bringing peace on earth. He says, as the angels say, I'm bringing on earth peace among those with whom his favor rests. There is on earth peace inside, not peace on earth. That's yet to come. But he came to bring a sword, if you will. That's what happens when the light is in the presence of darkness, when the sheep are in the midst of the wolves. There's tension. If you try too hard to avoid the tension, you won't be doing it right. That's the challenge of light and darkness. I'm not asking that you take them out of the world, Father. I'm just asking that you protect them in the world. Keep them from the evil one. And so there's the tension. Here's the sword, if you will. I have come. I love that because it says he was somewhere before here. Do not think that I have come to bring peace. I've not come to bring peace, but a sword. Whoever loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. This is all driving at the worth of Jesus. He's not making a suggestion that somehow he's instructing his followers not to love their parents and not to love their children. He presumes upon it. Of course you'll love your parents. Of course a parent will love their child. Of course he's making a comparison of whether he gets put in second or third or fourth or nowhere class. What happens when we love our children more than Jesus? It's a ding on his worthiness. Oh, what a great caution to our hearts, because we love our kids. If you do so, you're not worthy of me. He's making a comparison of worthiness, should you choose to put him somewhere down the food chain. He's not saying don't love your kids or don't love your parents. And then the ultimate. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Lose your life here, and you'll find it there. Find your life here, and you'll lose it there. It's a call to the cross. It's a call to say, he died for me, and therefore I died in him. It's a call to say that there is none more worthy than him. For who is it that rescues you from hell? Not your parents, and not your children. And you cannot do that with them either. It's got to be him. And there will always be this tension of the worthiness of Jesus in comparison to everything else in our lives.